Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that really gets right to the core of who we are. For most of history, people just kind of assumed that differences in human skin color were these ancient, fixed traits, deeply ingrained into our biology. It was treated like this massive dividing line that had existed since the dawn of humanity. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? Because if we just rely on those old assumptions, we're missing out on an absolutely incredible true story that's written right into our DNA.
So think about it. What if everything history taught us about skin color was backwards? Modern genetics has literally completely overturned those outdated assumptions. The science is crystal clear now. Some of the palest-skinned populations on Earth today are, genetically speaking, remarkably recent. We're talking about a localized adaptation that happened in a blip of evolutionary time. The real explanation for why we look the way we do isn't about deep biological divides at all. It actually just comes down to one elegant evolutionary trade-off.
All right, let's get right into the mechanics of melanin. To really get this, we kind of have to rewind to the very beginning of the human journey. Every single one of us alive today traces back to a common ancestral population in Africa, which makes us an incredibly close-knit species. We're far more genetically similar to each other than most other mammal species are within their own populations. And while skin color is undeniably one of our most visually obvious traits, it's actually controlled by a surprisingly small number of genes. Because the genetic architecture is relatively simple, skin color was able to change incredibly fast as early humans spread out of Africa and migrated into vastly different environments. And the star of the show here is melanin. It's a pigment produced by these little cells called melanocytes, which hang out right in the outer layer of your skin. Its main job? Regulating how much ultraviolet, or UV radiation, you absorb from the sun. It basically works like a dial. More melanin gives you darker skin and acts like a powerful shield against intense UV rays. On the flip side, less melanin gives you lighter skin, which lets more of that UV radiation actually penetrate. Which brings us to this great biological trade-off. Back in the early 2000s, anthropologists Nina Jablonski and George Chaplin figured something amazing out. They mapped historical skin colors across the globe against UV radiation levels by latitude, and boom, there was this remarkably strong correlation. Populations near the equator getting blasted by UV all year tend to have darker skin. Meanwhile, populations at higher latitudes have lighter skin. It is this brilliant evolutionary balancing act involving two crucial nutrients. In high UV environments, darker skin protects vital folate levels. Folate is a B vitamin that is absolutely critical for healthy cell division and fetal development. But in low UV environments, further from the equator, your skin actually needs some sun exposure to synthesize vitamin D, which you need for bone health and immunity. So, darker skin protects folate, while lighter skin allows vitamin D production. It's literally the perfect biological balancing act. Now, let's look at how light skin actually evolved. And spoiler alert, it happened more than once. The visible physical trait is really only half the story. The other half is happening under the hood, inside the human genome. Modern research lets scientists map exactly how this happened at the precise DNA level, which is just wild. They've identified the specific genes running this variation, stuff like SLC24A5, SLC45A2, and MC1R. So geneticists aren't just guessing anymore. They are literally reading the historical record of human adaptation straight from our genetic code, like piecing together clues in a biological detective story. And this leads us to one of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in modern genetics. Light skin didn't just evolve once. Nope. Populations in Europe and populations in East Asia actually developed lighter skin completely independently of each other. They ended up with a similar, visible outcome, but they took completely separate evolutionary paths using entirely different genetic mutations. This is what scientists call convergent evolution. You've got different populations facing the exact same problem, low sunlight, and independently coming up with the exact same biological solution. Okay, moving on to one of my absolute favorite discoveries, the Cheddar Man surprise. If you thought the independent evolution thing was fascinating, wait until we look at the timeline in Europe. 10,000 years ago, there was this Mesolithic British hunter-gatherer known as Cheddar Man. Well, genetic analysis of his skeleton showed that these early Europeans likely carried genes for dark skin. Yeah, living in cloudy, high-latitude Britain with dark skin. It totally shattered the old assumption that pale skin was this ancient European trait. So what happened? Right around 8,000 years ago, farming populations migrated in from the Near East, and these early farming diets had way less vitamin D than the old hunter-gatherer diets. That massive dietary shift suddenly cranked up the evolutionary pressure to make vitamin D through the skin, causing light skin to spread through Europe much, much more recently than anyone ever imagined. So what does this all mean? Let's talk about the real story of us. All this data completely reframes the whole conversation. Skin color is not some ancient fixed marker of deep biological division. It's just a comparatively recent, highly adaptive response to local environments, specifically how much UV radiation is hitting the ground. Historically, this simple adaptive trait was heavily misused to push pseudoscientific claims about deep biological or cognitive differences between groups of people. But modern genetics absolutely shuts that down. The objective reality is profound. Humans are remarkably genetically similar overall. This visible difference is actually one of the most superficial and evolutionarily recent adaptations we carry. We literally just adjusted our melanin to match the sunlight. That's it. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to think about this. How does understanding the recent shared reality of our DNA change the way we view humanity today? The story of human skin color isn't about deep, ancient differences at all. It's the story of one single, incredibly close-knit species spreading out across the globe and independently coming up with the same brilliant biological solutions to survive. It's a shared history written right there in our genes. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this fresh perspective leaves you as fascinated by our shared human story as I am.